Russian President Vladimir Putin seems immovable as his country faces unprecedented and severe economic sanctions.
The number of international fighters helping Ukraine is growing by the day, and the Ukrainian government says that more than 16,000 total now foreign fighters have arrived in the country.
Special edition of the interview here on France 24. We're today with Vitali Klitschko. He's the mayor of Kyiv, and his brother Vladimir, who is a member of the self-defense forces. Vitali, thank you very much. I want to ask you very simply, what is the situation in Kyiv? We are hearing that the Russian forces are arriving very, very close to the capital where you're speaking from.
Right now, the situation in Kyiv, it's not easy. We have a lot of Russian forces coming from northern and from east to Kyiv.
Russian President Vladimir Putin seems immovable as his country faces unprecedented and severe economic sanctions.
Результаты своих собственных ошибок пытаются свалить на нас.
Putin is warning the West those sanctions will backfire and send prices in their own countries through the roof. He says Russia's economy will, quote, adapt and emerge stronger. Vladimir Milov is a former Russian deputy minister of energy. Since leaving the Russian government in 2002, he's become a vocal critic of Putin. He joins us from Lithuania. Hi, Mr. Milov. Good to meet you. Thank you for joining our program.
My pleasure.
I wanted to first ask you about an observation some analysts are making about Vladimir Putin and the degree to which he is perhaps surprised by the strength of the Ukrainian resistance. Do you think it's accurate to say he would be surprised by that?
I think he faced a lot of surprises in the recent couple of weeks. First, the low capabilities of Russian army, which clearly seem to be not so much ready for a real combat, as Putin's generals had reported to him. Second, of course, the degree of Ukrainian resistance is a huge surprise to everyone in Moscow. If you only watched Russian TV propaganda shows of the past few months, they have been essentially mocking the Ukrainian army, basically translating the message from the Kremlin. And yet another issue is the severity of Western sanctions, which are crushing Russian economy even as we speak. I also think that was not expected neither by Putin nor by his inner circle.
I wanted to ask you about how effective you think those sanctions are or will be.
We're actually back to the late Soviet times when we really did not have food in stores, basic supplies in stores. You probably remember all these pictures with empty shelves of Soviet grocery stores. We're going back there. We're going to, several dozen percentage point inflation. We already have shortages of basic food and consumer goods supplies in many Russian regions, but this is just the beginning. I think in 2, 3, 4 weeks' time, we'll experience an economic shock that is comparable only to the period of 1989-91, the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union.
And do you think that will apply the necessary pressure to Putin?
Yes, because he doesn't have tools to fight with his difficulties. He really believed in his rainy day fund, the financial reserves of the Ministry of Finance and the central bank, which have been effectively blocked by the G7 sanctions against Russian central bank assets. He can't use that now. Basically, the only way out for him is to print money, which leads to hyperinflation, as we all know from the experience of early 90s. So he doesn't have many options on the table to contain this economic tsunami that is coming. And I know from a lot of my former colleagues who are still at the state service that there were no contingency plan. They were not prepared for this level of severity of Western financial and economic response. There is little they can offer, Putin's government can offer in return.
You're obviously, given your former role as Deputy Minister of Energy, familiar with the significance of energy to the Russian economy. The U.S. and Canada have blocked imports of oil and gas from Russia. Europe is far more reliant and has been far more reluctant to do so. Do you think that in any way negates the potential impact of sanctions, or will they still be as effective as hoped?
No, that will double down on the economic effects for Putin from Western sanctions. Already before the US and Canada had announced Russian oil and gas embargo, there has been voluntary restrictions imposed by traders, refiners, shippers all over the world. In the first couple of weeks since the beginning of aggression against Ukraine, Russia had lost about a third of its daily crude and petroleum product exports because of the voluntary self-imposed restrictions by market players. Now this is even going to increase further. So Putin's going to lose a lot of cash because of all these different restrictive measures that will definitely not help him to weather through these extremely challenging times.
You note, and many others have as well, that the West's response has been severe and unified. I wonder, though, if your sense is that they didn't think he would do what he's done.
Well, there has been some reports, intelligence assessments that Putin's full-scale aggression against Ukraine is possible. And, you know, the swiftness with which the Western sanctions were introduced, the incredible coordination in all these measures, tells us that the Western governments were like more or less prepared for this scenario. They were not caught absolutely unprepared for this. But generally, I think the predominant mood would still that Putin would refrain from this most extreme scenarios, which means that with all these negative predictions materializing, we can unfortunately expect more bad stuff from him, which requires applying even more pressure, doubling down on pressure to contain his potential malign actions in the future.
What does more pressure look like? And when you say expect more from him, do you mean going beyond the borders of Ukraine?
Yes, and I really expect a direct military confrontation between Putin and NATO countries. I think we should not treat this emotionally, but we should calmly prepare for that sort of possibility, which to me looks like a prevailing certainty at the moment, over 50% chance.
Why do you have that sense that it's over 50% chance? Because that, I just want to emphasize that for a second. You know, we're a NATO country. There's been this delineation offered by many politicians. We're not going to do a no-fly zone because it's not a NATO country that has been attacked yet. Why? Tell me why, if you can, you have that sense that Putin will go that far.
Because in the mind of Putin's elite, this is not just a propaganda cliche that they are translating. They do not really believe that there's an independent government in Ukraine. They believe that Ukraine is a West client state. So essentially, they already believe that they're at war with the West. They're absolutely angered with Western response to Russian aggression. They really want to punish Western countries. So I'm currently speaking to you from Vilnius, Lithuania. I very seriously assess, for instance, the possibility that Putin will attack one way or another the Baltic countries, either through acts of sabotage or directly. There is also an increased great possibility of an accident, because Putin's planes, missiles are flying in very close proximity to NATO borders. So that type of accidents might lead to escalation. There are plenty of options, but the bottom line is that Putin's ruling elite views this war as actually the war with the West and Ukraine as Western proxy, which means that one way or another, it's very reasonable to expect that they will step over and move further in retaliation to all these serious restrictive measures that the West have been taking against Putin's regime recently.
And just before I let you go, Mr. Milov, when you say for Western countries not to be, I think you used the word emotional, but to kind of prepare for it, what does that mean?
That means the scenario should be on the table. None of the containment options, none of the confrontation scenarios should be excluded. I don't want to scare anybody, but listen, 9 years ago, one of Putin's close allies, Dmitry Rogozin, who is now head of the Russian Space Agency, had spoken with a lecture which was titled "Russia would lose a war to America in 6 hours," where Rogozin actually laid out all the strategic weaknesses of the Russian military. So I think Putin wants to scare the West, to intimidate the West, to create him advantage on this global geopolitical battlefield. I think the main issue is to demonstrate that nobody is scared, and the response for various scenarios, however undesired, is still there, and the response will be swift and will be very severe, will have important consequences for Putin.
Mr. Milov, thank you very much for your insights. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.
The number of international fighters helping Ukraine is growing by the day, and the Ukrainian government says that more than 16,000 total now foreign fighters have arrived in the country. In just the last few days, we have met several Americans who say they are, too, planning to help Ukrainian forces. In fact, they are over the border as we speak. They told us they could just not sit back and watch.
We landed in Warsaw and saw them immediately. 3 Americans headed for Ukraine. Ready to die, they say, in a fight for survival against the Russians.
And what's the plan?
The plan to help to save the lives of Ukrainian people.
Andriy Penchek is a licensed truck driver who was born in Ukraine, but he launched this particular mission from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And while we read in his local paper that he's never been in a battle and used personal savings to pay for his tickets, he told us the hardest part was leaving behind his 3 young children.
I didn't say goodbye. I said, see you.
You said see you later.
Yeah.
While U.S. soldiers are staying out of Ukraine, everyday Americans like this are not specifically restricted from going in, says acting U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Christina Kyiv.
What does the American government say to Americans who are volunteering for combat in Ukraine?
We encourage all Americans not to travel to Ukraine right now, and those Americans who are in Ukraine to leave Ukraine because it is not safe.
Closer to the border, however, we caught up with bipartisan leaders of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Gregory Meeks and Michael McCaul, who had just seen the war's human toll up close.
How do each of you feel about our fellow countrymen joining the fight there?
I think that what they see and what people around the world seeing is democracy's at stake. And as you know, President Zelensky said to us, this is not just a fight for Ukrainian people. This is a fight for all of us. It's just starting here.
Ukrainians have inspired the world, and these freedom fighters, I call them.
Все направляемые Западом в помощь.
But on Thursday, Russia's military warned foreign fighters they'd be treated as mercenaries, not as protected combatants under international law.
As far as I see, civilians are not protected by humanitarian law, so I don't take much credence to anything they say.
We spotted Christopher Callis in full body armor walking toward the checkpoint into Ukraine. Before the war, this trained pastry chef with no military experience had been splitting his time between the New York culinary scene and Ukraine. But after evacuating his Ukrainian wife and baby to safety in Portugal, he decided to go back. Not to fight, he says, but to help others.
So you're Ukrainian by marriage, but on paper you're an American about to enter Ukraine
That's correct.
Join the war effort.
Yes.
Are you worried?
I am absolutely worried, yes. But I'm more worried for the people there who are not able to leave.
Is this something you're prepared to die for?
Yes. I want my child to have a Ukraine to go back to when she's grown up.
So we lost contact with Chris for a couple of days, but we did hear from him this morning. No pictures, but he said he is in, quote, deep. As for Andriy's, his group, we did get a picture from them. They are over the border. Take a look at it there. There's a sign with Ukraine on it. And we also noticed there on their car, they brought the American flag with them, still representing.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the interview here on France 24. We're today with Vitali Klitschko. He's the mayor of Kyiv, and his brother Vladimir, who is a member of the self-defense forces. Vitali, thank you very much. I want to ask you very simply, what is the situation in Kyiv? We are hearing that the Russian forces are arriving very, very close to the capital where you're speaking from.
Right now, the situation in Kyiv, it's not easy. We have a lot of Russian forces coming from northern and from east to Kyiv. They is around 15-20 kilometers from center of Kyiv, but we make a circle around Kyiv with our military forces. Ukrainian soldiers defend the Kyiv long time. Actually is target of Russians is capital of Ukraine, and the Russians try to make circle around Kyiv, to make blockade, to block the Kyiv, but our Ukrainian soldiers destroyed the plans of Russians, and we're very proud to have very tough soldiers who defend our houses, our city, and our country. Situation right now under control in capital. We have electricity, we have water, heating, but situation is not easy. Not easy because the citizens of Kyiv spent already 2 weeks in underground, non-stop. We listen bombing attack, Syrian in our city. It's mean everybody have to be in the bunker. People is no panic, but people, to be honest, is very nervous. We have, thank you very much for humanitarian help, for Red Cross, for many organizations and people who support Ukraine and send product, medical stuff to our city. And right now we have reserve in our hometown, because the war is disaster for our country. Logistic is broke, the economy doesn't work, and right now every day died civilian, children, women, old people, and yes, of course, died our soldier.
Obviously, there must be a concern. You're seeing the second city of the country, Kharkiv, being bombed. There are precedents of what Russia did in Grozny, in Chechnya, in Aleppo, in Syria. So are you concerned that there might be a full-fledged assault to try maybe to raise Kyiv?
It's not just the concerns, it's the reality. We've seen it. And these images cannot lie, that the city of Kharkiv, and not only, been bombarded, the districts of the city where civilians are, residential areas of the city, where no infrastructure, meaning important for military to destroy, for the Russians. They're just destroying human life, killing children, families, and destroying houses. This has nothing to do with the war against Ukrainian army, so to speak, as Russians trying to say it. This is complete killing of the civilians, and that must be stopped. This bombarding, been all around the country. Even the west of the country has been attacked today. Up to 1,000 Russian rockets have landed in the past days on the Ukrainian soil. Huge army, Russian army is trying to surround the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. There are fights, while we're speaking, there are fights going on around the capital, and Ukrainians defending with the will and believe our home. We're standing on the ground and defending ourselves. Yes, we did receive humanitarian help. We have received some of the military equipment, but it's never enough. It's not enough. We definitely need to act together, because we're protecting our freedom and our choice and the democratical values of the Western world.
Right.
We definitely need your support and economical isolation of Russia, because every single dollar, euro, whatever you name it, that is getting to the budgets of Russians are going to be used for weapons to kill Ukrainians now. Right. And there is no end to see.
Right. Vitali, I mean, are you fearing that there is no decision to enforce a no-fly zone by Western countries? They've said no. Even giving planes to Ukraine seems to be a problem. Do you fear that if this doesn't happen, there will be aerial bombardment of Kyiv in the hours or the days to come? Is this your biggest fear?
The message for everyone. We're fighting not just for Ukraine and defending not just our houses and our families. It's dangerous right now is everyone in Europe. This war touched everyone. Millions of people already moved and find the safety zone, safety place. Thousands of the people killed already. Right now, we're fighting, we're ready to defend our country, but we need help because we fight for exactly the same values, democratic values, exactly the same principles, what we have in Europe. The reason of this war, and everyone have to understand, the reason of the war, because Ukraine decided to be the part of European family. The Russians want to rebuild Russian empire. And our plans, they not accept. They want to implement the idea to rebuild Soviet Union. We was in USSR and we don't want back to USSR. That's why right now we need help. We need military equipment. Modern military equipment, because we stay front of one of the strongest army in the world, Russian army. But we show, Ukrainian soldiers showed great, perfect performance. Destroyed all plans. It's not secret. The Russians have plans in a couple of days to catch and take the Kyiv. Our soldiers destroy these plans. We're ready to defend our country, defend our city, defend our family, also defend the same principles what you have also in the front. We need military support.
Right. Vitali, you're involved in those self-defense forces. I mean, are you involved in actual fighting around Kyiv right now?
Right now, I'm responsible to deliver service, the heating, the electricity, water, gas, and make a service to the people. But I am together with everyone who fight. And if will be need, I take the weapons and defend our families, defend our countries.
Right. How many people have left the capital? There were 3.5 million people before the war.
Right now, left the city, women, children, and men stay in the Kyiv. We guess right now around 2 million people stay in the Kyiv. Kyiv is one of the largest city in East Europe, and we built right now 4 posts from Kyiv. And I can promise to everyone, we never give up. We'll be fighting, and we never give our hometown to the Russians.
Right. Vladimir, if you had in front of you Vladimir Putin, what would you tell him?
It's not just myself, but there've been even French President Macron speaking to him multiple times. You cannot understand ill mind. Vladimir Putin is not living in a real world. The real person will never, and healthy person will never do what he's doing, what Putin's Russia doing in Ukraine. Killing the innocent. I think all the conversations are probably gonna go to nothing. There is not much to say. Action speaks louder than words. Russian army is killing civilians. That's the action. That's the image of the Russian army and of the President Putin.
Right. Just as a conclusion to both of you, are you going to stay in Kyiv, whatever happens?
We stay in Kyiv. citizens of Kyiv give me right to defend the city, defend the interest of the population in our hometown. And that's why we stay in Kyiv, we defend our citizens, we defend our city, and we defend our country. And I have to say, I'm really proud of our women. Yes, especially accent on women. Some women left with children, some others left the children in the West and came back. And they are in the military and territorial defense and defending our country. Women and men, I'm proud of our Ukrainians compatriots, and I'm proud to be Ukrainian. I go around the city and check blog posts, and I see the people there, civilian, who never ever have idea to take the weapons in the hand. Right now they change, and right now with military uniform, with weapons with the hand, doctors, musicians, actors, the very peaceful profession, but right now they doesn't have a choice to defend our children and our families.
Vitali and Vladimir Klitschko, I want to thank you very much for taking some of your precious time in those very difficult circumstances and speaking to France 24 from Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Thank you so much.
One small message: stay with us. Unity with principles, with values is our key to win. Stay with Ukraine. We're fighting not just for Ukraine. We're fighting for everyone in Europe. It's very important. Unity, the key for freedom. Thank you very much for support of our country. We love every one of you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, and thank you for watching this special edition of the interview here on France 24.